Welcome to Door Insider, where we take a deep dive into the mindset, the why, and the how of the industry's top entrepreneurs, leaders, recruiters, and salespeople. We are the Door Nation. Here is your host, Lee Barber. Let's go.
All right, gang, I'd like to welcome everybody to Door Insider's first episode. And today we are coming in hot with two special guests. We have Doug Robinson and Luke Toone of Legacy Power. Doug Robinson is married and has 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. He is currently the CEO and co-founder of Legacy Power. Luke Toone is married 18 years, has 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. He's the chief sales officer and the co-founder of Legacy Power. Doug, Luke, welcome.
Hey,
welcome. We're excited to be here with you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you guys coming on and spending some time with us. We spent some time talking a little bit before the podcast started, and I just have a few basic questions that I'll ask, and I'll just let you guys kind of flow through it. I think one of the most important things that the listeners can pick up on that I loved when I asked you both, you're both door knockers. So you both started your journey to where you currently are through doors. And if I can, just individually, just a couple minutes, have you each spend just a little bit of time speaking of your first year or two knocking doors, what that experience was like, and how that helped you develop into the person that you are now. We can start with you, Doug.
Yeah, so my journey began in 2002, 2003, right in that era. I was approached by a friend of mine, somebody that I trusted. And I say somebody that I trusted because I believe our industry, that's the main driver of recruitment, is trust. Somebody that I trusted said, hey, why don't you come knock on doors? At the time, summer sales really wasn't a thing. Now, oftentimes when you tell people, hey, I was in the summer sales industry, it wasn't an industry. I knew one person, this individual who sold, and it wasn't going anywhere. It was actually in my hometown in Logan, Utah, small, very cold location. And he said, do you want to knock doors in Logan, Utah? It was my hometown.
What year was this?
This is like 02, 03, sort of the end of 02, transitioning to 03 when he asked me kind of that winter time, do you want to go do this? And keep in mind, there's snow all over Cache Valley. It's freezing cold up there during the winter. And I said, great, this sounds awesome. I didn't have a lot of opportunities financially growing up, and I wanted to provide. And making $70 selling a satellite system seemed like an incredible opportunity compared to, my buddy who owned a dairy farm, and we'd go milk cows before we'd play sports, So that was an amazing opportunity, and jumped into it and said, yeah, I'd love to knock doors. And I had a lot of success that first summer. I made $30,000, which was mind-boggling, but it wasn't really with a team. It was just me going out by myself and selling. And the school came around. I went back up to school and I just kept knocking doors. It wasn't a summer program. And that's sort of where the roots began. And a couple of years later, in 05, I ran into Luke and brought Luke on, as well as lots of other people during this time. And recruiting was easy. Hey guys, do you want to make more money? I'll show you how I'm doing it. Come out on doors with me. And we grew from there and scaled really quickly.
I love that. A lot of, what I see in the industry when you say someone that you trusted, I think that's a big deal, is you have to be able to trust the person that's talking to you when they're asking you to take a leap of faith. And, what you really get into is it's kind of attraction rather than promotion. Like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. Look at the evidence here. So that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Luke,
good call out. You mentioned, Doug, that you were on $70. I think you put me on a $60 pay scale.
Oh, I had to make an override.
I got to get $10 on Luke.
That full $10. But no, my evolution in door to door came and started with my twin brother, Mark. He asked me not once, not twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times to come and do this. I'm like, no, I'm newly married. I'm just doing summer school. My wife is teaching, and a plethora. I'm getting into a new house. I'm getting into middle management at Staples. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like living the high life. Yeah. I was like,
had made it.
I was going to be a general manager.
Boom.
So, but my career in sales started a little bit before that. And, you know, when I went and did school, it wasn't the easiest thing. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do to be successful? And I'm like, I loved communicating with people. I love being, you know, resonating with people. And I drew a love for that. And so for me, I got a job at Staples selling electronics, and their milestone that they were measuring was warranty sales. And so I'm like, I put a warranty on everything. I think I put a warranty on a stapler once that had a lifetime warranty.
Upselling, man.
And it caught on, and I started getting this regional report. And I'm like, I was top 50, and then I was going to be top 10 and top 1 in the region, and then district. I ended up being number 2 out of probably 34,000 employees. And just, you know, and the only reason I wasn't number 1 is I got married and I took a week off for honeymoon, and I blame my wife for that, not number 1.
Still her fault.
It's still her fault.
Yeah.
But so I just loved the competition. And then Doug introduced me. I said, no, Luke or Mark. And then Doug brought me in. And
so was Mark with Doug at that time?
So he was actually, yeah, he was
working with Doug.
He was working with Atlas, and with Doug, he was running sales with that. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll meet with Doug. And I met with Doug, and I'm like, great, that sounds great. You got to sell my wife. And then he met with my wife and sold my wife. And then we started this venture. My wife was like, hey, I'm not going to come out until after my school, and you have X amount of sales. I'm like, okay. So I went out there my first day. I'm like, honey, that's a lot of sales you committed me to go do. And I ended up hitting that and exceeding it, and then started my career in Chicago selling Dish Network in door to door.
And it was kind of made from there. So just out of curiosity, so Mark probably didn't have as much experience as Doug did at that time. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, you know, I made the leap I was in sales and transportation before I came to door, and Uber and Lyft came into Vegas and had a huge market infringement on me. And, you know, life changed. And I had friends that were in the door, and it's multi-level marketing. So life had a way of changing my perspective on it. And that's kind of what made me jump. But you had a little bit different of experience. Mm-hmm. You were comfortable, you were successful in your job. And as a young man, you know, at Staples, it is promising, right? You're having achievements. What was it that Doug said different that Mark, what trust level was he able to bring to convince you to say, hey, make this jump, it's going to be better?
And I think just, you know, whether you knock on doors and they say it's like you have to knock on 6 or 7 times on a door for them to eventually say yes on mm-hmm. average. I think Mark just had that. He caught me in a vulnerable moment. I said, yeah, let's talk to Doug. But Doug's someone from example of like work ethic and working hard, I just respect him when I went to high school with him, being a all-state running back and just excelling in that. I'm like, this is someone that I know he'll go through walls.
Yeah.
And he literally did.
That's awesome. And I've experienced a lot of the same things myself with people that I admire, you guys included, Seth. I mean, there's just some of the guys that we talked about that you both went to high school with that started the industry with you back then are just amazing people. And it's that attraction rather than promotion. So Doug, how do we get from, how old were you when you were selling Atlas, when you first started knocking doors back in 2002, 2003?
21.
So how do we get from a 21-year-old Doug Robinson? And so correct me if I'm wrong, but Legacy as co-founders, you guys have created the largest privately held solar dealership. And I mean, we can go into what you guys are doing now with the installs and in Texas and the panels, some really like phenomenal stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. How do we get from the 21-year-old Doug Robinson to this? Like what are the pathways in those early years that kind of propelled you into this human being?
Yeah, first off, it's partnerships matter. And I love that we're on here together with Luke, because we wouldn't be doing what we're doing without Luke's involvement in it and many other people as well. But calling it out, you have to have somebody that it's a marriage. I mean, we're both happily married, kids, everything else. We spend more time together than we do with our spouses probably.
Yeah.
And Luke pulls the very best out of me every day, and he complements my weaknesses. I can get too focused on the future and step on people's toes and relationships and different things at times. And he's very much a relationship person and does an incredible job with that. And so wouldn't be where we're at without Luke. But I think my journey was simply this. It's sports. So in sports, you learn you've got to be the first one on the court and the last one off the court. And you've got to be disciplined, and you never can quit, and failure doesn't exist. It just propels you forward and helps you to learn and grow. That's what sports are. There's a depth chart. There's a leaderboard. There's a numbers board. And growing up, I was very competitive, all sorts of sports. And I found in this industry, when you applied the same principles from sports and you applied it to this industry, I saw similar results. And so I just jumped into that, and it grew like wildfire. We spent 5 years with a company called Atlas Marketing, grew like crazy. A lot of industry leaders are still available or still in the industry today in various spots from that initial stage. But that business ended up going bankrupt. The owner ended up embezzling $30 million. The economy collapsed in 2008. He lost everything, and 400 salespeople went unpaid. So you can imagine, as a leader, having recruited 400 people, and all of a sudden it gets to the back end and nobody gets paid. That was terrible. That was like a low point in my career. And we had to make a pivot. That's when we pivoted into home security. And we joined up, Luke and I, with Pinnacle Security. So spent the next 7 years in home security and alarms, building teams around the country. But that transition was hard. I was going from president of sales, driving an Aston Martin Vanquish, 22-inch Giovanna rims, living in a big home with a boat and everything, to literally all the money I'd invested into real estate was gone with this guy, just completely evaporated. Those were tough times, and all these people unpaid. And I think it was like a social experiment at this time of what are you going to do when things get hard? What type of person are you? Are you going to quit and go take a safe, secure job with benefits in this path, or are you going to double down on what you know? And fortunately, we doubled down and we went back to work and went out knocking doors and moving a family around with kids, moved all over the country, lived in Portland, Oregon, lived in Philadelphia, lived all over the country, moving around with the young family. It was hard, but it's what was required at that time to grow and build. Alarms were amazing, met a lot of incredible business owners. The founders at Protection One and Pinnacle Security, and some of those guys, they're legends in the space as well, learned a ton from them. I joined up with Vivint for a short period of time, met some incredible people there. It wasn't the right cultural fit for me, probably more on me than on them, but it wasn't a good fit, and I wanted to be in solar. And people thought I was crazy. I was stupid. Why are you doing this? The tax credits are going to expire and you'll lose everything. And
that's kind of still the go-to for alarm guys, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all going to fail.
Yeah.
Right. And we went through various evolutions of that. And I look at where we're at today, through 22 days in the month, we have over 1,000 installs already this month. It's growing like crazy, and we couldn't be more excited.
How many installs?
Over 1,000.
Over 1,000 through 22 days of February.
That's insane. So one of the things, I think at any level, I think there are similarities throughout our industry, no matter what level you are. One of the things that you were talking about was this recruiting. Like you have a responsibility as a manager or somebody that brings other people on, whether you have one person under you or 20 people or 50 people or 100 people, and so when you're talking about what do you do when it gets hard, you weren't just facing personal financial insecurities when Atlas went down. You're dealing with at a more visceral level. I mean, first of all, it's very visceral when you and your family are facing financial issues like that. How many guys were under you at Atlas?
There were about 400.
When you have 400 other human beings counting on you and they believe in you, and the ship, not your fault, goes on the rocks, that's an incredible amount of emotional pressure, spiritual pressure, mental pressure to be able to, have to forge through. And so what I heard from you there is just to have the tenacity, the fortitude, and the grit to take that on and say, hey, what are we going to do next, to not be crippled mentally or spiritually. And any rep at any level goes through some of these things at different times, whether it's just a bad month in sales or a bad, whatever it is. But what do we do in those hard times? So I really love that.
I think you nailed it. That's my story, but everybody has those hardships in one way, shape, or form. It might be addiction, it might be family problems, it might be something that feels like the weight is crashing down on you. The world is crashing down on you. And I think that's the point, that if there's been one key to success for me, it's been that grit and determination and never giving up no matter what. Nothing. I think Luke and I are both to the point where we aren't afraid. The fear goes away after you've overcome so many different obstacles, because you can overcome anything. There will be challenges in the future. We don't know what's going to come, but we're prepared to take them on.
Well, you begin to trust yourself after a certain amount of time. You just believe that you can do it. So Luke, from your perspective, through that crash, you're with Doug. So you're experiencing the same thing. How do you process that and move through it and maintain a positive relationship, a work relationship with Doug, and forge forward into where we are now?
Yeah, it was a really unique time. And I remember we're in Montana selling after the summer, and Doug gets a call, and we're in the hotel room. He's like, the company's probably out of business. You keep selling, Luke, and I'll go figure it out. So
go get back on doors.
Go figure it out.
Sales gears off.
Sales gears off. Like, it didn't help. And so those 13 accounts I never got paid on. But that being said, it's just those are the moments that will make or break an experience. And one of the things that just the evolution, we call it the solar coaster, we call it the ups and downs of life. And I've always seen, even in tender moments and situations that are a little heavier, regardless of what the front facing is, there are moments of vulnerability. And I told Doug in a situation a couple of years ago when we went through like a vulnerable part of our business, I'm like, Doug, when you're backed up in a corner, that's when you punch the hardest. And that's when really grit, determination, it will define you. It's like working through, it's not the highs, it's the lows that determine your success and the attributes and characteristics of going forward. And so the resiliency of, keeping it going.
Yeah. And well, I think, it's a lot of things are easy to do when they're easy to do. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's who are you when it's tough, when it's difficult, or do your principles stand? Who are you when nobody's looking? When it's you and yourself on the pillow and you're making decisions on how you're going to react to the world in some of the most difficult spiritual, mental times that we can go through as people, how are you going to face those battles as a man or a woman? Are you going to back down, or are you going to accept the challenge and figure out what do we do next? And it's, it's not folding the sails in the storm, it's maintaining your course. So I think that's just amazing. So we got that, how do we get here? That's an amazing story from you guys, and just a partnership. So how long have you guys been in your partnership together?
So we recruited Luke in 2005 is when he joined Atlas, and Legacy's been around for coming up on 8 years. So we've been together at Legacy for that long, and it's been an incredible ride together.
One of the things I want to call out is so many people are aspiring to be the owner, the man, or this, that, and whatever. And one thing is like, enjoy the journey, but respect the process. So many people want the end result without doing the work. Like Doug in 03, me in 05, working in every denomination of every part of the industry and working in the highs and lows is what got us to where we're at now. And I feel like what had taken 15 years of our journey, you could probably get it down to a couple years, maybe, or 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 10 or 15, depending on the individual. But just enjoy the journey, but respect the process and don't skip steps. Because for us, it's like Doug is so in tune in vision and in the execution and drive and challenges and working through, and he can go and fix a problem, in the moment, and I can be the relationship guy to kind of keep things at bay. But we've been through all of the steps, and we've been through, hours and days and years of like mastering our craft. And it's just, the journey is just, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's the education. And if I was to start in 2020 versus 2005, I would love to do that, putting in the same work, because my first summer, I think I made 18 grand my first summer, and I was the top first year rep in our field. But it's just been an incredible journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm going to give a little analogy on basketball, but just a quick shout out to you guys. Just got the Utah Jazz. That was
fun.
Name on the court. You guys, it's a big deal. So congratulations. One of the things that, and I think you're right, because one of the analogies, I know you're right. One of the analogies that I always use is basketball. It's really easy for a guy to sit on the sidelines and watch basketball, watch it on TV, understand how the players operate, understand how the ball moves, what the rules are. It's a very different thing to be on the court, and I think you have a lot of sideline players that can watch and tell you how the game works, but not as many players who can actually get on the court and move the ball down the court and put the ball in the hole. It's a completely different thing. So, and I see a lot of that in the industry too. So that's a big shout out. Don't skip the steps, embrace the suck, go through every part that's needed. Because every part's that needed to become that man or woman that can lead other people, you have to know how to set, you have to know how to knock doors, you have to know how to close, you have to know how to recruit somebody, you have to maintain somebody, you have to teach somebody, you have to, all of those little granular things that we learn along the way, any of those steps, and then we don't have Luke Toone and Doug Robinson sitting here. So that's amazing. So, I had a question written down here. Dynamic partnerships usually have two personality components. And I'd like to know how you guys complement each other. Most of the successful partnerships that I see, you have two very different people who balance each other out in the same way. So from you guys' perspective, how does your partnership operate, and what value do you bring to each other?
Great question. And I love it. There's a lot of different personality tests out there. There's a lot of different, you can look at them for days, and the colors, or your red personality or your yellow personality, or various different ones. One that I've found a lot of value in is really understanding who I am. And it just resonated with me, but I'm what they call an ENTP, which is I'm very focused. I'm in the future. I'm very analytical, very process driven. Inside of that. And, that's kind of how I am. Luke, on the other hand, is very in tune with how everybody is feeling, very in touch with the emotional sides of how people are feeling, how I'm coming across to them when I may not be aware of that. And so the partnership from my perspective is crucial, where I would probably hurt relationships. And a lot of people wouldn't tell me this, but I'd step on toes or come across trying to get something done and just drive a process. But how are people feeling amongst the process? And what's more important, being aware of how people are feeling or getting the process done? It's neither. You have to have both. And that's really, I joke, like Luke's the CSO, he's the chief shoe officer. And it sort of said tongue in cheek, but it's really true. Like, he's used shoes to connect with people all over the country. Our salespeople, make them feel appreciated and loved. It's become part of our culture, but he does that, and it's genuine. It's not forced by him. He loves everybody. I love him too. I struggle to show it to people. It's very natural for him to show that and be so inviting. And can't tell you the number of times when I go anywhere and they're like, man, Luke just made the biggest difference, and he cares about me, and the little things that he does. People don't see this stuff, the handwritten note card, or the little incentive, or just having somebody's back, or at a restaurant, somebody's sitting there and he goes and slips him $100 without anybody knowing, and he wants no credit for it. He just like pays for somebody's meal, or it's like these little things, he's constantly doing them, and it adds so much value to our organization.
No, yeah, I agree. And just to echo that is partnerships do matter, and there are complementary factors. If you have two Doug personalities or two Luke personalities, you're narrowing what your like availability and pool set is. And so for us, I feel like there's people will naturally draw themselves to Doug because they love that vision and direction, and they aspire to that. And some people need the emotional connection, and then, you know, the coddling and feel like everything's going to be okay. And they resonate with me. And so I'm like, those are some things why we've been able to grow at the level we have is I'm not forced to be a Doug and he's not forced to be a Luke. We can work tandem and side by side to really accelerate the business.
That's amazing. And you know, it's one of the things that I've learned in the short 5 years that I've been in the industry. I you know, watched many dynamic personalities, and that's generally it's my wife as well. She's my business partner here. She's very analytical. She's much like you. You know, I call her the anchor and I'm the balloon. You know, I'd float all the way up into outer space, and she's like, no, you need to come back down here. And you know, one of the things, a big shout out, and you mentioned it before, Doug, is you wouldn't be here without Luke. But what that means is, and this leads to my new question. My next question is, what do we do in tough times in the partnership? So, you know, I'm a big believer in principles above personalities. And what that means is that I think whether it's, you know, a partnership with my wife or a rep or a friend, there are going to be times when there's disagreements or everything isn't perfect in a partnership, or because it really is, it's a relationship. And we're talking about in this industry there are a lot of very interpersonal relationships. You guys have been together for a long time. I'm sure it hasn't all been, you know, salt and honey. There's been some tough times. How have you guys navigated and kept your principles maintained above the personalities in those moments?
I think the foundation for both of us is that we both put in the work. Like, there's never been a time I may disagree on, Luke, you're coddling him too much, or he may be like, you're being too much of a jerk, Doug, you're being too direct, or like these things, right? They're little things, but at the core of it, he freaking shows up. You know what I mean? He's there. He is there despite any obstacles or challenges. He's going to be there, and he's going to be putting in his effort. And I don't think it would have worked for either one of us if we weren't all in from a work ethic perspective. And I think that's a foundational principle of, are you really putting in the work? There's a lot of people that talk about it, but I know what time he gets to the office, and I know what time he leaves, and I know the late night conversations we're having at 11 o'clock and the 27,000 phone calls and text messages and group me messages that we're responding to and involved with on a daily basis. And I know that he's putting in the grind. And I think that's a foundation that we've been able to build on as we both work. He was always in sales. He would always try to get the first deal of the day. It's just what he did. He'd leave the correlation meeting and go right out to the area to get the first deal of the day. And he'd try to get the last deal of the day. It's just what he did. And I did the same things. And so that foundation is set, that this is who we are, and we know we're going to grind. And I think that has set us up to be able to move past any of the theoretical differences or, you know, how you go about things on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, Doug was my boss when he was in Portland, Oregon, managing an alarm team, and I was in Pittsburgh. But I would text him before knowingly he was still in bed because it's so early in Portland versus on a Saturday morning in Pittsburgh. And I would text him, how many do you have? You know, I'm like,
I wake up and he's already has 2 deals.
I'm like, 3, how about 3? You know, and I'm waiting for a referral. So, but we both respect the grind, and we never have to challenge each other on if we're trying to pull our weight or not. And there's times when I've been less relevant and I drift a little bit, and then we right size each other. But at the end of the day, there's just a high level of trust on we're both going to put in massive amounts of effort.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. It's you know, partnerships in any level. I think, you know, even with reps in their first year, sometimes that partnership is with their wife, just supporting them from home, or just having a good partnership with a manager. But to see what this grows into from 2005 into now, and you guys just sticking through it and having those principles in the tough times, that's amazing. So over time, I know there's been some different challenges for you guys. Between, you know, Atlas and the alarms and those situations. I think one of the questions I'd like to ask is, getting out of alarms in and of itself and moving into the solar space. This is kind of something that we see across the industry, right? It's funny because Seth just posted a picture the other day, and he was in his first solar deal with me. I took him out knocking the first couple days, and we had conversations in my kitchen. And this is industry wide. And he's like, "No, it can't be true. It takes too long to get the install." So that's at a rep level. You guys are looking at moving. At that time, I'm sure you had substantial people underneath you, not just moving org, but moving industries, companies, which is it's moving into fear. It's walking away from the table of comfort into an unknown industry, an unknown field at a much higher level. But it speaks to who you guys were. I'd like to just talk about that moment and what you thought and felt at that moment and how you approached that.
Yeah, my situation.
Have you watched Jerry Maguire before?
I have.
Show
me the money.
When he steps out of the office and is like, "Who's with me?"
That's how
I was Doug's receptionist.
Okay. I love it.
There it is. In a way, that's true. I was at Vivint at the time. Income was good. Had lots of salespeople doing lots of accounts, lots of volume. Things were good. Culturally, it just wasn't the right fit for me. I think I was at a stage of my career where I wanted to spread my wings. I actually tried really hard to get involved in the solar business with them. Vivint Solar at the time, it wasn't public yet. They were spinning off from the two. And Blackstone, for a period of time, decided we're going to put a temporary ban on people leaving the smart home business or the alarm business and going into the solar business. And Luke was already in solar, and I was like sort of caught up, and they're like, "You can't go work for Vivint Solar. You can't switch companies." Seems really weird. But at the time, they were like, essentially they'd invested and they wanted to get a return on investment from their alarm business. Yeah. They didn't want too many people to shift, but that was sort of the wrong thing. You can't do something for me. I think I'm stubborn or whatever it is. And so at that point I decided, hey, I'm going to go and look at solar options. And I got to the edge of my entrepreneurial journey where it was like, okay, am I really going to take the jump? You're at the edge of the cliff. Are you really going to take the jump? And I got pushed. I didn't make the conscious decision. I was fired and sued. Mm-hmm. And so I was now facing litigation, a startup business, big company after me. And that for me was sort of like, okay, backs up against the wall. What am I going to do? And we knew we could make it work. We'd done it in several different industries, but we didn't know anything about solar. Luke knew a little bit. He knew what a panel was. I had no idea what an inverter was. I had no clue. I didn't barely even know what a kilowatt was. I'm like, how does this work, Luke? But we knew we could make it work. And suddenly we found ourselves, I sent an email to Sunrun, partners@sunrun.com. I have email still. And I sent this email that was like, hey, my name's Doug. I think I can build a national scale sales force if you're interested. Like something like that, right?
Yeah.
Tier 1 person gets it, tier 2 person, tier 3 person. We still aren't incorporated. We still don't have a business. And they're like, hey, yeah, we'd like you to come out here to San Francisco to meet with us. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm waiting for them to pay for my ticket or reimburse travel or something. It's how salespeople think. Yes. Are you going to, nothing ever came and nothing was ever offered. Oh, this is real business. And I found myself on the 25th floor of this building, downtown San Francisco on Market Street, overlooking the bay, and I'm like, where am I? And all of a sudden I've got Lynn Jurich, who is, the CEO, no longer the former CEO and founder of Sunrun there, and Ed Fenster. And Ed's chairman of the board, and he's the most brilliant human being I think I've ever talked to in my life. And I was intimidated. I mean, I was like, what is happening? And they asked me, why should we trust you? I remember this moment. And, why should we trust you that you can do what you say? They're like, you have a building, you have a company. I'm like, nope. You have employees, you have a customer base, you have any, nope. We don't have anything. We've got some people and we can build out sales nationally for you. And we know we can do it. Like, what in the world? And still to this day, I laugh about it with Lynn because she's like, I don't know why we trusted you, to be honest. But in that moment, I said, well, how can I trust that you can install the jobs if I go sell them? Said at some point we've got to trust each other, and shortly thereafter that we started our partnership with Sunrun. But that was a crucial partnership for us. We couldn't have done what we've done without Sunrun's help. They understood the space, they understood the financing, they understood the supply chain and the equipment, they understood the CRMs and the workflows and all of those things that we were novices of, and we really needed them. And so that partnership was really crucial. But we only got paid, $400 a kilowatt total when we would sell a system as a company. That's like
total
400 a kilowatt in California. It's like a 6 kilowatt average or something, and so we thought we were just crushing it. But we paid our reps $250 a kilowatt, managers $50 a kilowatt, making $100 a kilowatt to cover any overhead. So we had like 5 employees, like 3 employees, something like but we were making no money. And we did 350 megawatts for him on that pay scale.
Wow.
Something similar. So that was,
wait, how many?
350 megawatts.
Megawatts.
Yeah. So we were with them when they went public. They invited us out to their IPO, and we were a big piece of that. And forever grateful for the knowledge base, but we were substantially underpaid, and the industry shifted over those first 5 years massively.
One of the things that I've had these conversations over the last couple of weeks, and it's amazing to hear it at this level, is listen, financially, yes, in today's marketplace, we would call that substantially underpaid. But mentally, the education that you got from that was literally priceless. So sometimes we're doing work that we don't feel, we can't look at money as the only way that we get paid. Sometimes the education that we receive for doing certain things propels us into the stratosphere of what we're capable of. And so if we just look at gaining financially, we're not looking at everything. And so to hear you say that, and to say that the partnership with Sunrun was pivotal and how much you got paid, but wow, how much did that actually pay? I mean, look at what you guys have done with that set of knowledge. So that's substantial.
So Doug brought up that, we were at this economics when we were mapping out what direction we should go. We basically had options, not just Sunrun. We had multiple, and all of them paid double. But because of the situation, what we learned in the past and critical errors that we've been in business with, couple companies either not being in business or not, really like solvent, we chose to go with like the structure, the Sunrun, what they're accomplishing. And it wasn't necessarily the most popular decision. And we definitely got offers to work for another company for double. But it was just really interesting why we chose Sunrun. And even though if it was a micro penny we were making, it was the right direction for our business.
It was SunEdison. SunEdison was willing to pay double at that time. They went bankrupt. And
so if you had chose that path.
And we know many that did during that time period that aren't around anymore. Right. But reps make this decision. Should I go with the lowest red line, or should I go with who pays the most, or whatever else? Had we done that, we wouldn't be here today and where we're at.
Yeah.
And so there's far more to it, to your point of what's the other value, the intangibles, not just the money or the pay scale.
That's there. And so I want to just shoot back to the Jerry Maguire moment, right? Where, and I've heard, and I'm familiar with the story. It's great to hear you guys, talk about it, because if it hadn't have all happened, right? Like, thank God for everything, gratitude for sometimes a door shuts and it really just opens up these other phenomenal doors. So from your aspect, Luke, Doug says, hey, we're going in. What does that look like from your perspective?
So for me, I felt similar in Doug in a different area. I was doing solar in the Bay Area. I wanted rapid growth. I wanted to make a larger footprint and a larger impact. And, I remember, with my resume and alarms and satellites, and, I had to submit an application to be a manager at Vivint Solar. I had to submit an application to Chance. And then he interviewed me and so it was pretty interesting, but to go through that process, and they were opening up an office every 2 weeks or something like that. And there's growth. And as soon as I jumped in, Doug funneled me over there thinking we're going to work together. Shortly after, they went on a hiring freeze because they were, lack of funds, deployment, this, that, trying to handle their business. They obviously worked through it and did well. But at the time, it was really clunky, and I felt like I couldn't reach a broader audience, and I wanted to impact more. I just wanted to help as many people as possible. But they're like, be grateful for your one little situation in one office and just kind of deal with it. So for me, it was like going and being like, throwing my hand in the air. I'm like, I'm in regardless of circumstances. I was comfortable too. And I was in a good situation. I was selling, at the time, really good numbers, and my team was doing well, but I just felt like it wasn't a broader reach, and I wanted to, impact even more. And hence the name Legacy. It's like what we're going to be remembered for, and making as big of an impact as we can was important to me.
That's strong. And, I'm thinking back to what you said in that meeting with Sunrun. I think part of that is, obviously you guys had both gained this skill set, right? Which not a lot of people have. You had transcended past just selling and knocking doors and managing, but into helping people, right? And it's giving people opportunity, but then also showing them how to fish, creating that opportunity for other people to a large scale, which is a very unique talent in our industry. So, once you have that, I just trying to look back at that, like how do you write this email, right? But inside, there's certain things that about yourself. Hey, I can do this. And this is some of the things that I talk to even just with our reps on the floor here, or just conversations that I have, is that when you're learning this, you're learning a skill, even just as a door knocker. You can take this skill and you can go to Texas or Florida or any market, and you just go knock on a door, and you now have the ability to go out and create commerce from thin air. And it's a very powerful thing. And then when you go past that into the level that you guys had gotten to in the industry by then, there you are sitting in front of Sunrun with this very unique talent, this very unique set of talents. You know how to do more. And that's, and they say, what is luck? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. But the opportunity, and this is, something that I think about a lot, is having an abundance mindset. Is we're continuously trying to create opportunity. So Sunrun didn't send you an email. You sent Sunrun an email. You created yourself an opportunity. And so by creating that opportunity, sending that email, then your preparation meets that opportunity that you've created. And then look what we have here. So that was a huge, huge takeaway for me on that one. I'd like to ask, who are you guys' so, listen, I have some I've been in the industry for 7 years. Seth is one of the guys that I call for day-to-day advice. Some of the guys that you guys know that I grew up with in the industry at Vivint, those are some of the guys that I see, and I don't get to talk to them very often, but I kind of emulate what they do because I've seen that, from Sunday planning to making sure that I'm constantly reading so I can perpetuate that down into my org. Those are the people that inspire me. So my question is, who are the people that inspire you guys at your level?
Well, first off, we need to get you a better mentor than Seth. So I'll put that on record here. I hope he's listening. No, I love Seth. But...
Tattoos and shoes? That's not exactly
the way to go. Oh, man. We'll leave this one here. Put this one to bed.
Are you guys going to adopt me? I'll take it.
Done.
I believe as you go through life, you learn, you grow, you develop, you fail forward. There's this process. And I think a mentor early on for me versus a mentor now, they're very different because there's the skill set of an individual, what my needs are change over time. I needed a mentor early on when I started my career knocking doors of somebody to teach me the skill, teach me how to sell, teach me how to do it. And that was this individual. His name's Brandon Ripplinger. He's a varsity wrestling coach at Beaumont High School, and he's crushing it now. And he was my mentor. He was somebody that I really looked to early in that stage. Whereas now, I love Brandon, but he's not the same mentor than he was when I started out. And so it changes over time. And I would say mentors now for me, I love reading. I love books. I love, Audible, and I love coaching books particularly. I love hearing from, NBA coaches or NFL coaches and hearing their experiences of how does a college coach recruit? You talk about the SEC. How does the SEC go and recruit the top talented football players, and how do they recruit them? Like, that's really fascinating to me. How do you build team culture inside of a football program? How does that happen? Like, that's really applicable to me. And so I lean on a lot of those things right now. And then also for the industry, this industry is changing so fast. So I'm constantly trying to think about what's happening to the technology side of our business. As reps, we show up, we sell the technology put in front of us, but who's leading that charge? Who are the engineers that are leading the charge and trying to revolutionize this space? That's part of why we've partnered with Aptos. I think they're revolutionizing the panel manufacturing and some of the things they're doing. I love meeting with them and what's happening. What's happening with inverters and batteries? What's happening globally with the grid and the outages that we're having? And we need $1 trillion to go into the grid over the next 20 years. Who's the industry expert in that? Right? These are big things. How can we learn from people around us and those things? So found myself networking a lot in our space from other industry people of how we can really take this world of solar, get out of, what did you say? The shoes and the whatever
shoes and tattoos,
like separate that and say, how are we going to really change the world with renewable energy, and who are the thought leaders in that space, and how can I contribute as a thought leader to our space? Because this is, as the Wall Street Journal calls it, the early innings of residential solar. And we have so much that we need to do with the electrification of the home, adding batteries, what technologies we're using, and how we're really going to conquer that. And I don't think anybody has figured it all out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having a conversation the other day with one of my buddies, and we were talking about market disruption, and we're primarily in the door-to-door space. There's some online stuff and some phone stuff, and but mostly we have the door-to-door space. And from my perspective, it's interesting to hear you say that, because it's something that I think I'm like, wow, where does market disruption come from? How do we change the industry? And I'm kind of a fish in a pond, looking up into the world, thinking, how would I change it? But to hear you say that, like your mentor, and that's really a big shout out, and that goes all the way down, in my opinion, is it's books, it's content, it's people, it's the constant need for more information that helps you be better than the person that you were yesterday, and how to be creative in your space and to win. So you really changed from a single mentor into, how do I disrupt the industry? How do I enter the industry? What are other people doing? What are other thinkers doing? And just taking in a massive amount of content, it sounds like.
Everybody is my superior in at least one way. If everybody is my mentor, now look at the advantage I have on everybody else.
That's awesome. Luke, for you?
So, easy one is my dad. He passed away, and I loved him last year, and I adored him in attributes of just being a gentle giant and caring about people unconditionally, regardless whether they do wrong or good. And so that for sure. Doug, obviously, I'll tout, about him any day. He's my mentor. We're not 50-50 materially as a partner, but emotionally he makes me feel that way. And that's something that means the world to me. And we go tackle the world, and I get to lean on him and confide in him and share how I'm feeling. And that's something that's really good. Another thing is that I work with my best friends, like Seth Grenny. I learned so much from him, and how responsive and how actioned he works for people. They don't work for him. John Soriano is one of the love leaders. And every time I talk to him, John Soriano is a SoCal leader for me. love him to death. Every time I talk to him, he's like, how can I help you? What can I do for Legacy? And I see Pistol Pete out in Florida. He's an incredible, quirky, fun, loving person. Has a wall, but as soon as there's trust established, he's one of the most enjoyable people I've worked with. And Paul Rundle, my twin brother, I work with him. Wouldn't be in the industry the way that I am without him. I think, getting in the industry when I did, and he begged me 6 times, I would eventually got in the industry, but not under the same circumstances or the same journey. So I look up to my brother a lot, but I love that, like, Doug says, is superior in one way. Everyone is, or a mentor in one way. I seek for the best attributes from the leadership that work with us, and try to amplify that in the day-to-day for Legacy.
That's amazing. And a lot of what I hear in that is just, the people that you surround yourself with. I think that it's funny. I just did a correlation the other day, and I was sitting through it, and one of my guys that I trained was doing a training, and he unpacked some numbers, and I was like, oh man, I'm stealing that. So, he's just, but it's being an open, half full cup of water, right? Tolstoy says that the strongest current of water can't add a drop to a cup that's already full. So it's just being surrounded by really good, strong, healthy personalities. And just a lot of what I hear from what you both respect in people is just servitude. And I think, we had a conversation before the podcast started. I'm a big believer that leadership is servitude. It's not, it should lack ego. It should lack wanting to be, you should be one of the best in the room, but not need to prove that you're one of the best in the room. And the way that you actually prove that you're one of the best in the room is by serving other people and helping them be as good or better than you and raising them up. And that's just service through servitude. And what you said is like, why? Well, I respect you because your question is, how can I help you? And that's really the winner for me right there. I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about, we won't take up too much time. I want to hear the numbers from 2021, because I had the pleasure of going to the Legacy event, and some of the numbers were just jaw-dropping what you guys did. So I want to let you guys show off here a little bit. So what did it look like for 2021 for you? The growth, how you guys felt about 2021. I know that you've helped thousands and thousands of reps and door knockers and managers become successful in their lives and just win. So what was the 2021 year like for you guys?
Yeah. So as I think back of 2021 and even before, if you Google what success looks like, the first image that comes up, what people think, and it's a straight line up and to the right. And then what it actually looks like is a whole bunch of squiggly lines, all over the place. And I love that little visual.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what our journey has been like. 2021 was a historic banner year for us. Just in every metric, we crushed every record that we possibly had. And 2022 is going to be even bigger. We believe we'll hit 600 million in sales in 2022. And we've got the pathway to go and do that. Our journey, as we mentioned earlier, we began with Sunrun, where we were a sales partner, and we had to navigate and build out software to support a direct sales engine. So we built out a platform that Luke and I are principal owners of, called Canvas. It's a separate business. Many door-to-door companies utilize our software platform that we created for Legacy, and we spun it out. But that software has really enabled the growth to get us to where we're at. And so we became a sales organization, then a software business. Many people don't realize that. We actually develop software and apps, iOS, Android, getting developers, building the whole software thing, monetizing that, selling that product, having people pay you for it. It's a recurring revenue, SaaS-based business. Then from there, we said, okay, now what's the next step? And in 2021, we got to this place where it was like, we really want to control the customer experience. We need partners to be able to do that, but we wanted more control of that. It didn't make a lot of sense to me why an installer would get paid the money and then the installer would pay the sales organization the money. Why didn't the sales organization get the money and pay the installer? It seemed more reasonable to us. And so we started that transition last year, and then moving forward into 2022, we're going to be focused on, installing more jobs, owning that customer experience. How can we delight them for 25 years, all the way from when we first knock on their door all the way through 25 years? This is a relationship. How can we really build that and wanting to own that? But 2021 was monumental in every sense of that. Anything you'd add, Luke?
No, I think our campaign last year was be relevant, and we just wanted to be relevant to the industry and relevant to our customers. And when Doug says, hey, our focus was never to be an installer, because we didn't want the liability. We ended up having liability when an installer went out of business. And so we naturally evolved and changed our mindset, and we've evolved. But last year was like a huge monumental shift in our business and operationally and logistics and everything else. And if it wasn't for 7 years of build out with Doug came to me 6 months into the business and says, hey, we need to build tech. I'm like, okay. He's like, we need to buy a company. I'm like, okay. A company that built out some of the other competitors' dashboards and competition platforms. And that's really been a core focus for us, is growth accelerators, is good culture and technology differentiation. And in a competitive industry, those are things that we think will stand out, and why we've been able to grow, and why I feel that legacy is becoming a first look option in the industry.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch. From my perspective, you really get to see, seeing some of the legacy trucks out in Dallas and just owning that process. A lot of what you see is when you have two separate entities, is you have two different ethos, right? And so I can understand that. So my last question here for you both, I usually ask somebody what advice would they give a year one rep? One of the lessons that I learned early on was don't overestimate what you can do in 1 year and underestimate what you can do in 5 years. So because of you guys' stature in the industry, instead of what would your advice be for a 1 year rep, what would your advice be for somebody in the beginning of their journey in the door-to-door industry from 1 to 5 years? What would you tell somebody?
Yeah, I would say first thing that comes to mind is simple and pure as you can, is work really hard and have a great attitude. I feel like this industry brings the best of the industry, but people, and I've seen the worst of people in this industry. And I think it's basically a component of working hard and having a good attitude. So if you keep those core fundamentals and then just never give up, there's so many times in my journey where I stress test my marriage and stress test my physical ability to go out and run door to door, exhaustion. I had 2 deviated septums, and I got sinus infections probably 4 times this summer. And I just stressed that to the point of a physical, mental, relationship wise, and for me, just persevering through and going through that journey is allowed a far greater outcome than I could ever imagine. I've always been not many people will see me, kind of bitch, moan, and whine. I don't complain down. I don't try to complain to Doug. I'm try to see a positive attitude and see the best in the situation. But I would basically just work harder than anyone else. And that was a differentiator for me. Doug said it, and I'll echo it, is I ran a correlation meeting, but I was the first one out. I put on my shoes, ran to the car, posted a boom, first person, and I tried to lead from that example. And then I loved the industry for what it is, and keeping a good attitude.
So don't be a little bitch.
Don't be a D-Bob.
Don't be a D-Bob, baby.
Yeah, BMW.
Don't do it.
I love it, Luke. I agree with both those things, and I think that's the foundation. Something else I'd love to call out is, especially in solar, for those in solar, but it's any product, care about your customers. I run across stuff where I'll see fraud, whether that's, proposals or this or that or whatever. And it's I don't know how sales reps get to this place where they're okay with that and they justify in their minds, but you don't have to lie. be straight with the customer. This customer you're making promises to, be honest, be forthright, tell them the truth. Don't make up facts to thinking that you have to oversell. Don't make up warranty claims that aren't actually true, or whatever that might be. Whatever's causing you to misrepresent, there's enough value in what we're doing. Whatever product people are selling door to door, there's enough value in the product and in the service that you're offering that you don't have to misrepresent. So remember that in your quest, that you can do it with honesty, with integrity, without manipulation or any of those things. You can be good and honest and be a salesperson. And it's okay. Love your craft. Love to be called a salesperson. There's honor in it. Just do it the right way so we can lift up the whole industry together. There's a lot of consumer protection agencies and different people out there where, one apple spoils the rest. That idea, man, we got to work together as an industry to clean up the bad actors that exist out there. So don't allow yourself to get into what could be out there call it the 1% of the bad apples. Like, don't allow it. Get rid of it. Find ways to clean it up, because all boats rise. We all know that. And I think the industry needs to come together regarding those tactics of what we allow and what we don't. And I think we can all drive towards that together.
That's incredible. I think what I try and I remind my people of all the time is we're dealing with homeowners. And
That's right.
We all have mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and cousins, and we own homes. And, ultimately these people, this is their most valuable investment. And sales through education and principles is so
That's right.
much, it just lasts so much longer, and it just feels so much cleaner. And it's just better to walk away from a homeowner and a home. Some of these people are in their homes for 25, 30 years. Some of them are retired. They have kids where their children sleep. To serve them properly, I think is amazing. I think if you talk about the two things, work hard, don't be a little bitch, and really sell with integrity.
That's right.
You can do the job a lot longer, and you'll go a lot further because you'll earn a lot more respect throughout it. So listen, guys, crazy honored. I want to throw a little shout out to Abundance here. I've had you both on my wish list for at least a year. And, faith with works. And this just goes into every area of life, I believe. There's no way that I could have put this day together in any type of plan or way other than just faith with works and planting some seeds along the way to have you both sitting here. So it's a huge honor. And, with an abundance mindset and 2 feet, you guys are here. And I appreciate you for being here and for what an honor it is to meet and talk with both of you guys. I've met you at the event, but to have you unpack this stuff for me in the industry, what you've done for me personally is amazing. To watch 2 door knockers. I just love our industry and what we're capable of, and to have you guys come on here and give advice, it's just a massive honor, in my opinion, to me and to anybody that has the opportunity to listen to this.
The honor's ours, man.
Yeah,
honestly, we're grateful to
it.
do it and love what you're doing. So
Awesome.
Let us know how we can support you.
All right. Well, this is it. Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Appreciate it so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.